This is the offseason. The Atlanta Braves definitely should go all out and spin big on a top free agent, but will they do it? We'll talk about that on today's episode of Locked On Braves, so let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. Also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on social media at @shortstopball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves on X and Locked On Braves on Instagram. If you're new and you're watching this on YouTube, please do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button, leave me a comment down below. All those things that help us here at a Locked On Braves. Thank you so much for your support there. And on the audio side too, you can help out. Just leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Big shout out to all my everydayers out there. Appreciate your support a ton. Today's episode, we're going to take a look at the free agent predictions out there by MLB Trade Rumors. We'll talk about the ones where they believe the Atlanta Braves are going to go this offseason. And we're going to talk about why they're not predicted to go to any of the top ones, because that's pretty much been the MO of this front office for a long, long time. So we'll get into all of that on today's episode, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Also, later in the episode, we're going to get into the new managerial hires, a third base coach, new bullpen coach. We'll talk about that in the final segment. But in these first two segments, we're going to be primarily focusing on the free agent class. MLB Trade Rumors, they put out their top 50 free agents, ranking them, giving predictions for years and dollars, as well as predictions on which teams will sign them. So that's always a fun way to kick off the offseason. I'm going to start it off here in segment 1, talking about the players that were predicted to be signed by the Atlanta Braves. Now, the way that MLB Trade Rumors does this now, there's 4 different writers on there, and they all make a prediction. So if any of them predicted the Braves to sign one of these players, I put them on this list. And the first one is Chris Bassitt. And they had him predicted to sign for 2 years, $38 million. So it's roughly $19 million a year. Chris Bassitt turns 37 in February, so is on up there. So you're paying for $19 million a year for age 37 and age 38 seasons, but he's been very reliable and very good. He's made 30 or more starts now in 4 straight seasons with an ERA of 4.6 or less in all of them. So again, he's been very dependable and he's been very good when he's been out there. He's definitely more of a pitcher. If you've watched Chris Bassitt pitch, I believe it was the game, might have been in 2023, even when the Braves offense was so good and we went up to Toronto and Chris Bassitt was just mixing and matching and dealing. I believe it was a matchup between he and Spencer Strider. And Strider was fantastic too, but it was kind of similar to that Chris Sale game against the White Sox in 2024 that you lost 1-0, where Strider was excellent. He was pitching great, but the guy on the other side, he was excellent as well. And the guy on the other side just happened to be Chris Bassitt in that game. But it's not like he can't strike you out. An 8.3 or better K per 9 in each of the last 5 seasons. So he does have the ability to strike you out. He was injured at the end of this past year in 2025 with the Blue Jays. So he wasn't in that rotation to start the postseason and never was inserted back into the rotation. But he became a big piece of the bullpen. And look, you sign Chris Bassitt, you're paying him almost $20 million a year. You're expecting him to be in your rotation. But it's also nice to know that there is that fallback option, that he's been in that reliever role in the biggest stage. And he was one of the Blue Jays' best relievers on their World Series run. So no qualifying offer, obviously, with Chris Bassitt. So that certainly helps. Again, just a veteran guy. He's not somebody that's dependent on just pure stuff. So I like that as well. Somebody that can mix and match and pitch his way through, 5-6 quality innings. So I like the idea of Chris Bassitt. I think he fits that mold of what I'm looking for in my wish list for a starter. As I've said many times now, I don't need a top of the rotation arm. Give me a veteran that I know can go out there, pitch 5-6 innings and keep me in the ballgame. Now, $19 million a year for 37, 38-year-old is a lot of money to pay for that, but I think it's very much needed for this Braves rotation to give somebody that or at least as much as you can know for pitchers these days, is somebody that is going to give you 170, 180 innings, quality innings too. So I don't mind the idea of Chris Bassitt. That is a bit expensive, but you got to pay. I mean, we're going to talk about this in the second segment here. At some point, you got to pay some money. The next one is Brad Keller. 3 years, $36 million to $12 million AAV, 30-year-old right-handed pitcher. Had a breakout year this past season as a reliever with the Cubs, a 2.07 ERA, a 2.82 xERA with just over a 27% strikeout rate. Hadn't had an ERA below 4.57 since 2020. So again, this was a very much a big breakout year for Brad Keller, making that full transition to the bullpen. Four-seamer ticked up and averaged over 97 miles per hour. Big whiff rate on the sweeper and the changeup, even though those were his two least used pitches, but went to him in the right spots. Held righties to a 466 OPS and a 148 average. So very good reliever coming off a very big year. And it's also one of those guys, too, that why I think most of these writers probably linked him to the Braves as a possibility is because it feels like the Braves were just becoming that team that, hey, you got either that reliever, could be a starter, maybe you try him back as a starter. Who knows what happens now that Keller's had this breakout as a reliever? Maybe he's looking to sign with somebody that's going to give him a chance as a starter again. And, the Braves obviously did that with Ronaldo Lopez. They were very much on Jeff Hoffman last offseason. And I bet that's probably why many people want to link Brad Keller to the Braves, because they seem likely to after those kinds of guys. Next, they did all think that the Braves are going to sign Ha-Seong Kim. They predicted 2 years, $30 million, which is $15 million AAV. If that's the case, and look, I'm starting to get on the side of things after last week's mailbag episode. You didn't give that a listen, go back and do so. But question at the end of that was about, do you overpay for Ha-Seong Kim in free agency? Do you spend a lot of money to go get a proven veteran like, maybe a Corey Seager, who you're going to pay a lot, but obviously comes with some risk, but when he's good, he's great? Or do you trade for the cheap prospect who's unproven but could be really good? And I posed that question to a lot of you over the weekend. We're probably going to do a fuller podcast on that. But I'm starting to lean towards, don't overpay for Ha-Seong Kim if you don't have to. But this deal, 2 years, $30 million, their prediction, if that's the case for Ha-Seong Kim, that should have been done already. Now, as a Scott Boras client, he's going to go to free agency. He's going to get the best possible deal. But I do that deal for Ha-Seong Kim all day. So if that's the case, then yes, it absolutely needs to happen. I have a feeling it's going to get higher than that. It's probably going to get to a third year, and I think it's going to get closer to $20 million. But consider Ha-Seong Kim. He's coming off an injury-riddled season in which his defense took a huge step back, and that was a big proponent of his value before the injuries was his defense. Is that coming back? We don't know. We hope so. And even in his best year, which was in 2023, when the balls were juiced, he had a 110 WRC plus. So we're talking about a guy who, again, in his best season with juiced baseballs, put up a 110 WRC plus, and a guy that a lot of his value came from his defense, which we didn't see this past season coming from those injuries. So it's a huge question mark and risk with Ha-Seong Kim. It's one I'm willing to take just because of the lack of options out there. And I'm definitely willing to take it at 2 years, $30 million. But if it goes much beyond that, you start getting the $20 million AAV range for Ha-Seong Kim, I'm going to say no, thank you. And I'm going to look for some other options out there some way, somehow. Two more here that they predicted the Atlanta Braves to sign. Raisel Iglesias, obviously, 2 years, $26 million. That's $13 million AAV. That's about at the top. I've been saying, 10, 12 million. I'd feel a little bit more comfortable with Raisel Iglesias, but 13 million makes sense for the second half that he had, where he was pretty much Raisel Iglesias. Now he does turn 36 in January. He's coming off a year in which he had a 3.21 ERA, which seems pretty good, but it was his highest ERA since 2019. But again, tremendous down the stretch, looked like himself again. And he's had 29 or more saves in 4 of the last 5 seasons. So he's been a really good closer. The last one on here is Seranthony Domínguez, 2 years, $18 million. It's a $9 million AAV. He's 31 next season, coming off a career high in innings, 30% strikeout rate, but a near 14% walk rate. Had Tommy John surgery back in 2021. Throws really hard. So another one, just kind of giving you another high leverage possibility. I don't really necessarily buy the Seranthony Domínguez one with that high walk rate, but let me know what you think. What if this was the Braves offseason? What if they just signed a shortstop? What if they signed Kim? They get a 3-4 starter like Chris Bassitt, like a Merrill Kelly, And then they get 3 high leverage arms like Seranthony, Domínguez, Brad Keller, Raisel, Iglesias. What if that was the Braves offseason? Would you be happy with that? I think for me, that's almost a bare minimum. And maybe you don't even have to get 3 high leverage arms, but you definitely need 2 after letting Johnson and Kinley go in and not really knowing the status of Joe Jimenez. You definitely have to at least get 2 guys that are high leverage, and at least one of them can close, if not both. But this offseason to me is kind of the bare minimum. You're still missing that one piece in the big bat. I'd be okay with this offseason. I'd probably give it a B minus, C plus. But in order for this to be that big offseason, I need somebody also at the top of the food chain. I need that big bat. I need that big signing to really put this offseason over the top. What they just outlined there in the predictions they made, getting Kim, signing a 3-4 starter, and getting 2 to 3 high leverage bullpen arms, that's the minimum, in my opinion. But let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Next, I want to get to some of the other names on this free agent list, some of their predictions, and who I think the Braves need to go after to have that A-plus offseason. We'll get into that here next. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game, you can still jump in on the actions, riding the hot hand, looking for that fourth quarter comeback. Plus, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. They have World Series odds out there. It hasn't changed since the end of the season. Braves still with the 8th best odds, despite bringing in a fire coaching staff. Their odds have not increased yet. I don't know what's happening there. Get on your game. But you can also check out FanDuel, where they have the NBA's finals odds right now, where this Oklahoma City Thunder are big favorites. NBA Cup finals. You can go see the NFL odds out there. Super Bowl odds right now are the Kansas City Chiefs and the Eagles, the Bills, the Lions up there, the Rams with the 4 best odds, or I guess 5 if I can count correctly, 5 best odds. You can see all that out at FanDuel.com. Also, please make sure you visit FanDuel.com/play-safe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way that you play. Don't be like Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz. Make sure that you play responsibly. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day, solely getting caught up on all the action happening around Major League Baseball. It's a new week here at Locked On Braves. I said earlier, I want to do an episode breaking down the question we had on Friday's mailbag episode even further. What is the best way for the Braves to handle the shortstop position this offseason? If I give you those 3 scenarios, which way would you go? We'll talk about that. I also want to do an episode on how they handle the bullpen. How much do you really need to spend on the bullpen? But now without Johnson and Kinley, there are some more holes to fill. What are they going to do out there? We'll talk about that this week as well. We'll obviously get into our mailbag episode later in the week, and anything that breaks this week. Hopefully we get some news happening, the GM meetings happening later this week. So maybe we'll get something to come out of that. So make sure you subscribe here to Locked On Braves. I want to go back through the top of the free agent class. Again, these are predictions by MLB Trade Rumors. Go check out that article. Link it down in the comment section below. But I want to go through the top of the class here. And there's something I want to point out once we get through the first 23 or so names here. Obviously, the top of this free agent class is Kyle Tucker. They have him predicted to get 11 years, $400 million. And you just know right off the bat, the Braves aren't touching that. They're not even in the discussion. They predict him going to the Dodgers, Yankees, Phillies, and Giants. Pretty much whenever there's any big free agents, the only other name in there that you don't see that's a bit surprising is the Mets. But Dodgers, Yankees, it's usually Dodgers, Yankees, Phillies, Mets, something like that. The Giants obviously can spin big. They have in the past, and they're in that mix. But you just know right off the bat, the Braves they're not even a candidate to be for Kyle Tucker. Number 2, they have Bo Bichette, and they have Bo Bichette getting 8 years, $208 million. And that's only down to that point because most people don't view him as a shortstop long-term. All 4 of their writers predicted that he will go back to the Blue Jays, which is pretty interesting. And sometimes you have a run like the Blue Jays did, and the team grows close, and you get so close like that you have that tendency to just want to run it back. You grow close to those guys. And Bo Bichette was really good. I mean, he had that big 3-run home run in Game 7. So, I mean, I could see them wanting to run it back with Bo Bichette. I think it really just depends on how teams are going to view him long term, or the shortstop, or do you move him to second base, maybe even DH if you have to. 8 years, $208 million, though. I mean, that seems pretty fair for his age and his bat. He's been a really good hitter outside of the 1 year where he was just riddled with injuries. Next is Dylan Cease, 7 years, $189 million. They have the Red Sox, Orioles, and Phillies as the predicted places for him to go. I know a lot of Braves fans want the Braves to go get Dylan Cease. It's a lot of money for a pitcher. It certainly is. I get it, but it's what you got to pay. And Dylan Cease has been very dependable. He's given you a lot of innings, giving you a lot of starts. He's, a postseason caliber type of pitcher with big strikeout stuff that you want. But the Braves aren't in the mix, or at least not according to these predictions. And I think from what we've seen in the past, you just don't expect them to spend 7 years, almost $200 million on a pitcher. The next one here is the big bat coming over from Japan, and Murakami. They have him predicted for 8 years, $180 million. They have 2 of the writers picked the Mets, 1 picked the Red Sox, 1 picked the Dodgers. I know Murakami, he's got the big power bat, one of the best power hitters coming out of Japan, but I also read a report where he really struggled on pitches higher than 93 miles per hour, which I think the average fastball in Major League Baseball this year was 94 miles per hour or something like that. So that would concern me a good bit if I were looking for Murakami. Again, another player that's just not going to the Braves. We already know that going in. Next is Alex Bregman. They have him predicted for 6 years, $160 million, going to either the Tigers, Phillies, Mets, or Tigers. I had Tigers on there twice. Unfortunate to see the Phillies and the Mets on that list, because I would really hate it if Alex Bregman went there. Not a fit for the Braves. I wouldn't hate. I know Alex Bregman played shortstop at LSU back in the day. I don't think that. I know we talked about this last offseason too. I just don't see that happening. And with Austin Riley, you're not moving Austin Riley back to left field or anything like that. So I just don't think Bregman. I would love to have Bregman, and I think that price is even somewhat reasonable for today's market. I just don't know where the fit is. Unless you're going to put Riley at DH, and maybe you kind of maneuver it around that way, and you just want to go get a great bat. Sure, go get Alex Bregman. Because Bregman needs to play third base. He's very good defensively. Next is Framber Valdez, 5 years, $150 million. They have him predicted to go to either the Giants, Cubs, or Orioles. Good pitcher, very dependable. Again, top of the class there. I don't love the situation he had with his catcher last year, where he basically just nailed his catcher because he didn't like one of the pitches he called that led to a home run. But he's been a very good, dependable pitcher. The next one on here, I apologize, I can't say this name, Tatsuya Imai, I-M-A-I, 6 years, $150 million, the best pitcher coming over from Japan this offseason. They have him predicted to go to the Cubs, Dodgers, or Mets. So again, familiar teams up there predicted. The next one on here is somebody I all very much am excited about and want, and that is Cody Bellinger. And 5 years, $140 million, $28 million AAV. It is a lot. It would be the most for the Braves. They have 3 people predicting him to go back to the Yankees, which is what I think will happen, and another one to the Rangers. But just go get him. I mean, he makes so much sense. It's 5 years. It's a $28 million AAV. I get it. But this is the one for me. I take a chance. I take a risk here. For either, I'll go through the rest of the list, and then I'll come back on that. Let me call out a few more here. Kyle Schwarber, 5 years, $135. They all have him going back to the Phillies, which is what I think will happen. Ranger Suarez, 5 years, $115 million. They have him going to the Blue Jays, Giants, or Cubs. Nobody has him going back to the Phillies, which is kind of interesting there. Edwin Diaz, 4 years, $82 million, $20.5 million AAV for a closer is a lot. Interesting on him too. Nobody has him going back to the Mets. They have him with the Dodgers, Giants, Yankees, or Blue Jays. I would love that if we don't see Edwin Diaz go back to the Mets. I would love to see him come to the Braves. Michael King, 4 years, $80 million, $20 million AAV. Orioles, Tigers, and Yankees were their predictions. I love Michael King, but his, making that move from bullpen, 2-starter, then getting injured, having all the injury issues that he had last year. Giving him 4 years. I get it. Every pitcher is a risk. And I just said, at some point you got to go out and take a risk, but it's a pretty big risk, I think, for Michael King to give him 4 years, $80 million. If I'm Michael King, if somebody gives me 4 years, $80 million, obviously you take it. But I'm wondering if he takes that qualifying offer, comes back next offseason, tries to stay healthy for the entire season, comes back next year. You can probably get a similar deal, if not better, if he pitches like he's capable of. Zach Gallen, a guy who I predicted the Braves to sign in my offseason preview, 4 years, $80 million, $20 million AAV. They have him going to, that was Michael King. I was reading. It was 4 years, $80 million for Gallen, $20 million AAV, going to D-backs, Angels, or Giants. It's a lot for Zach Gallen coming off a pretty bad year. I kind of expected his to be a little bit less than that, maybe more 16 to 18 AAV for 3 or 4 years. So that's a little bit more than I was hoping for. I was hoping you're getting a discount on Gallen, and that still probably is a discount for where he's been in the past. But even you look at Gallen's numbers, he's had 1 year of being a great starting pitcher, and the rest has just kind of been, good, but not great. Again, at some point you got to take a risk, and I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. It's just a little bit more than I was hoping for. Devin Williams, 4 years, $68 million. That's a $17 million AAV. Giants, Blue Jays, Dodgers, Mets, go get them. I mean, the stuff is still great. I don't know what happened in New York, why he wasn't able to get it done in the closer's role there, but the stuff was still fantastic. So you want to make a big splash, you want to help your bullpen, go sign Devin Williams. You want to get somebody new, younger to replace Iglesias, go get Devin Williams. Robert Suarez, 3 years, $48 million, $16 million AAV. Another guy that I like, but I think it was between him and Iglesias. I take whichever is the cheaper one. It's probably Iggy. Merrill Kelly, 2 years, $36 million, $18 million AAV. Pete Fairbanks, just 2 years, $18 million, $9 million AAV. I go do that in a heartbeat. I know he's had some injury risks, but also has been really good when healthy. Somebody else with closer experience. Gregory Soto, another guy that I predicted in my offseason preview, 2 years, $16 million, $8 million AAV. I mean, it's a lot for a guy who can only face lefties, and you're already paying Aaron Bummer $9 million this year, but he is that good against lefties. And, I would do that. You got to go spend some money at some point. And that kind of brings me to my point here that I want to make, in that you go through this list of predictions and you don't even see the Braves mentioned until the 24th best free agent. And that's frustrating, especially when you look at the top 10 free agents and you see Cubs, Dodgers, Mets, Tigers, Phillies, Mets, Phillies, like your division rivals. They're both predicted to sign pretty much anybody in the top 10. And yet your team is not mentioned until the 24th best free agent. At what point are you going to take, and I get you don't just want to just throw money away, but at what point are you going to go out and actually spend big on a top free agent? Like for me this offseason, it feels like the right time. Today, we're coming off a pretty rough year. We're trying to enter in a new coaching staff. I want to get them as much help as possible. We cut back salary last year to get under the tax to reset it. If not now, then when? And for me, when I look at this list, and again, you all know how much I like the idea of Cody Bellinger. Go give him 5 years, $140 million, $150 million. Take somebody in this top 10 and go spend big for once. It's just, it's a little frustrating as a fan to see how much money the Braves make. And it's not fair to them because their books are open and we can see it, but we know how much you make and we know how much you could spend. And to read a free agent prediction list where your rivals are mentioned with any top 10 free agent and you're not mentioned until you basically get to the bargains and the Chris Bassitts and the Merrill Kellys of the world, that's where you're predicted to sign players because that's the track record. And so a little frustrating. And I'm hoping this is the year, and it should be the year. This should be the offseason that you go out and you take a risk. You take a risk on Dylan Cease. You take a risk on Cody Bellinger. You take a risk on Zach Gallen, Michael King, Devin Williams. You take a risk on one of these guys. This feels like the offseason to do it. But we'll see. We'll see if it actually is. I know I'm being overly optimistic in thinking that that will actually happen this time. And that's just, that's why these predictions are what they are, because the Braves haven't done that. But I'm hoping this is the offseason that changes that. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Will they do that? Will they actually spend big on a top 10, top 15 even free agent? Again, they weren't even mentioned till the 24th best free agent on this list. All right, next we'll get into the latest news, including the 2 new coaching hires. We'll talk about that here next. The NFL and NBA seasons are back, and honestly, there's nothing better than getting in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee, so you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. That's one of the big reasons why I love using the Game Time app. There's no surprises. You're picking up, or you're looking at your seats, you're viewing them, you see it's a great deal, but you're thinking, I know when I get that checkout screen, it's gonna be inflated. That's not the case. You pay exactly what you see there. You also, when you go into a baseball game, you get a view from your seat, so you know if your view is going to be obstructed. You're going to Wrigley or Fenway, sometimes your seats can be obstructed there. You know exactly what it's going to look like. I use it whenever I go to Braves games. I use it this offseason already to go to a college football game, and you can use it to download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Just swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. We'll finish things up here looking at the 2 new coaching hires that happened while I was recording the mailbag episode on Friday. So I apologize that I'm a little late getting to this news. We had a lot of questions to get to on Friday. I thought it was a really good range of questions. So if you haven't given that a listen, please go back and do so. But the Braves did hire Tony Mansalino as their new third base coach, replacing Freddie Gonzalez there, who we knew was there just to help out Brian Snitker to get through the season. Nobody really thought he was coming back. Mansalino was the interim manager for the Orioles last year after they fired Brandon Hyde. He went 60-59 with the club after that, so a winning record. That's pretty good. He is 43, so another young coach, and we're seeing that with this staff that they're building behind Walt Weiss. They're going a little bit younger. Mansalino was the third base coach for the Orioles since 2021, and before that, he was a hitting coach and infield coordinator for the Cleveland Guardians. Was an infielder in the Pirates system as a player, but didn't spin on shortstop, so that's a bit of a bummer there. But I talked about this on Friday's episode because somebody did ask me before we knew about these new coaching hires who I wanted, and I said for me, I want one of these guys to be a defensive specialist. I don't think we've got that in Mansalino, but at least he has been an infield coordinator in the past. I would guess maybe he's going to be the defensive coach too. So we'll see what happens with that. And then the other coach was JP Martinez, not that one, not the one that just played for the Braves outfielder a few years ago. That's immediately what I thought. I said, man, that's pretty quick transition for him, going from being a major league hitter in the outfield to being a bullpen coach. That's a pretty weird shift. But JP Martinez, the bullpen coach, is also 43 years old. Again, with that new age shift there. Was the Giants pitching coach in 25 and an assistant pitching coach with them from 21 to 24. Was with the Twins for a while as a pitching coach in the minors, and then was the organization's overall minor league pitching coordinator for 3 seasons as well. So some good experience there for really both of these guys, even for how young they are. And yes, early 40s is young for somebody who's approaching that. But a lot of experience for both of these guys, which I absolutely love. Yes, they are young. They're probably a little bit more analytically driven with that newer age, but they've also had a lot of experience. So that's great. I'm excited about both of these hires. Again, don't know a ton about either one of them, but just from what I've read on them, I think they're moving in a good direction. There also was a little bit of transactional news. The Braves bring back Carlos Carrasco and Darius Vines on minor league deals. Obviously, Carrasco spent a little bit of time with the Braves last year, did not go particularly well. Vines didn't pitch at all in 2025 after recovering from an injury, but both of those guys coming in as depth. Do not go crazy right now, being upset and thinking that they're just bringing back retreads and being cheap. It's just depth in the system. If all goes well, you don't see Cookie or Darius Vines at all this year. But that's some of the news from the weekend and last week as well. But really excited again for the new coaching hires. Still got to find that bench coach, which we talked about that on Friday's episode too. Eddie Perez, I didn't mention him on Fridays, but Ron Washington, Eddie Perez. If you could somehow get George Lombard, I know I very much wanted him for the coaching role, but if you could get him to take a shift into the bench role for the Braves, which he's a bench coach right now for the Tigers, but maybe he'd rather be the bench coach for the Braves. Who knows? And you could also put him in that position to maybe one day take over as manager if it works out that way. But we'll see who they end up going with that bench coach. And I'm more so just curious to see do they continue this trend of bringing in younger guys. They have not made an announcement on Tim hires, but on the radio interview that Chipper had, he mentioned that he was going to be more working with hires this year, so that we all just kind of assumed that means he's back, but we don't know. And hires is under contract for 2026. So again, until we're told differently, I expect him to be back next season. So thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Locked On Braves. Appreciate your feedback and you continuing to come back and give me a listen. Hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button on YouTube if you haven't already. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.